Hey there, my name's Brisendine. I'm the founder and creator of the 1 Year 1000 Challenge, coach, speaker, and author of the book, Ouch, My Heart is Broken, A Heartbreak Survival Guide. And what I want to talk to you about today is creating a blissful space. What is a blissful space? The other day I was driving through the beautiful mountains of Santa Barbara and I had this epiphany. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Southern California, the last 5-6 years we've been in the midst of a horrible drought. So much so that everything has been brown, well, most everything, and vegetation that we normally have, the grass hasn't had its shimmer, there hasn't been the golden glow on the mountains. Well, now we've had some rain, and all of a sudden you're starting to see this new vibrance in the grass. You're seeing darker greens in the trees and the leaves, and it's absolutely spectacular. And I was driving through the mountains noticing this. There was no cars coming from either direction, and I had this feeling inside of me, and I realized I was so blissfully happy in that moment. And I started to think to myself, well, what is it about this moment? Why is it so different right now? Why am I so happy right now? And then it occurred to me, so many of us live our lives, and when I say so many of us, really most of us, I'm going to be hard pressed to find somebody who doesn't fit this, even if they're a big traveler, in our lives in these tiny confined areas, right? You call it your space. And if you think about it, what does your normal day-to-day routine consist of? You're going to drive the same road to and from work. You're going to go from one building, your home, your apartment, wherever you live, to another, the place you work. You're going to spend most of your time in there, and then afterwards, if you do something social, you might go to your favorite spot, your favorite place for dinner, your favorite place for a drink, or perhaps you go somewhere where you take your kids for sports or after-school activities, and then you come back to the place you started. And that is, for a lot of us, our 9 to 5, morning until evening routine, Monday through Friday. And on the weekends, you might do some of the same things, meaning that so much of our lives is lived in this confined little space. Now, why is it that little space can't be a blissful space? Now, this was my theory, and my really big aha was, I think why it is because so many of us work so hard, and I'm being very, very deliberate when I say that, we work so hard at contaminating our spaces. Now, why is that? Well, I think there's 3 big reasons that I kind of came up with during this epiphany moment that why we contaminate our space. The first one is Ain't It Awful has become a club. What do I mean by that? Show of hands, how many of you have a water cooler, the proverbial water cooler or coffee machine at work? And how many of you have or some sort of communal gathering space? And when you gather at that space, how many of you have or overhear negative conversations, right? Politics, news, drama, relationship woes, dietary challenges, whatever it is, it's all a bunch of negative stuff, right? Or if you don't have a defined space in your work area, what about going on Facebook and you go through and you talk with some of your community groups? You go on certain pages, right? And same thing, there's a toxic element interjected. Right? You're bringing in your space, you're bringing into it, welcoming into it, so to speak, contaminants, stuff that takes away from your bliss. Stuff that takes away from your bliss. Ain't It Awful has become a club. We've become a species, or we're becoming a species in some cases, that we're forming bonds over negativity and strife. We're connecting over drama and problems, as opposed to coming together for celebrations and love and joy and happiness. Ain't It Awful has become a club, and if you're a card-carrying member of that club, you're going to be hard-pressed to find bliss in your space, because there's not going to be space for it if you got Ain't It Awful in there too. The second thing I thought that was really contributing to this is we have gotten to a place where so many of us are choosing to value right and wrong over love. What do I mean by that? How many of you, show of hands, have been in or are in or know someone who is in a relationship? How many of you in that relationship have ever had an argument, a disagreement, or maybe some sort of mortal combat with your significant other? How many of you in the midst of that argument, disagreement, mortal combat with your significant other get 5 to 10 minutes into it and realize that what you're arguing, disagreeing, or discussing about isn't even what it originally started? And now all of a sudden you're talking about stuff that doesn't even pertain to the initial thought. Right? I think if most of us are really honest, we've probably gotten there. We've allowed our emotions to get away from us, and we go from what we brought to the table, the problem, to something completely different. Why is that? Because when we get in these discussions with people we love and care about, we choose to value right or wrong over love. What do I mean? The reason the conversations take a different direction, they steer away from the initial thing, is because so many of us start presenting evidence about justifying our behavior. This is why I did this. This is why I said this. Well, no, you said this and I did this. And when we get in that state, it is imperative, if we want to be right, that they have to be wrong. And none of us really want to be wrong, do we? Now, if we were to do something different and we were to look at the person that we care about, regardless if it's a relationship, perhaps it's a brother, a sister, a family member, a friend, whoever it is, and if we looked at them as a problem, a conflict came up, and we looked at them and thought to ourselves, I know this person is a good person. Not only that, but I know this person cares about me. Not only that, but I know that this person probably does not have a bad intention right now as they're addressing this with me. How can I see them and receive this from a place of love, as opposed to immediately getting defensive and thinking it's time for me to defend myself? Wouldn't that change things? Think about it. Wouldn't it change things if you saw your partner when they came to you with some difficulty? You saw them as the person who you once saw when you got together with them. How much would it change things if you looked at your partner with the same eyes when there's something bugging them as you did when you fell in love with them? Right? How much would it change things if you went to talk with your kids? You discuss things with your kids with the same eyes as you do when you're praising them. How much would it change things if you looked at your coworkers with the same eyes as you do when you're giving them high fives for a job well done? You see, when we get away from love and we focus more on right and wrong, we're in a victor and loser situation. Nobody wants to lose. Nobody wants to lose, and nobody wants to feel like they're wrong. And even if somebody is in the wrong, oftentimes they will defend it to the very end. So much so that they will bring in so much other stuff into the conversation, and you'll get right around with it. You see, when we're in a right and wrong versus love, nobody loses. Nobody wins and everybody loses. Because love gets cast aside, and instead we start to get in a relationship where it's a fight. The third thing I thought that was something that we're doing to contaminate our bliss is we've gotten to this place in our lives where we are putting such a high value on anger. And why is that? Because anger feels really good when there's uncertainty. Right? So many of us, I think, have a great deal of uncertainty in our lives. Whether it's uncertainty about our job, we're not happy with our job, we don't know if we want to stay here. Uncertainty about our relationships. You know, they're not the same person who I met. There's just not the same romance. They don't look at me the same. They don't act the same. They're kind of a jerk. Uncertainty about our health. Uncertainty about our relationships in general. Uncertainty about where we stand. Uncertainty about how people view us. And so in times of uncertainty, what can we do to feel instantly better? Get angry. Because if we're really honest, and anybody out there who's ever been angry before knows, when you get angry, right, you go into this tunnel vision. Everything else disappears. And the only thing that you're absolutely certain about is that thing that you're focusing on. And when you're at that level of certainty, it feels really good, doesn't it? It feels really good. It's almost intoxicating. Now, when you're done being angry and you have that cool-off period, and then you think, oh, shoot, what did I do? What did I say? That's a different experience, isn't it? But in the moment, it feels good. It elicits all these really powerful chemicals from our brain and hormones, and it gets us really fired up. And when we feel a lot of uncertainty, there's no greater way to ease that uncertainty than to get angry and feel certain. The problem with this is of course, again, it brings a lot of contaminants into our blissful space. Because rather than getting certain about who we are, where we stand, and about the directions we want to go in our life, instead of focusing on how to figure out solutions, we're focusing so much on our problems, we are always opening up the door to invite more anger in. You want to transform your life? Get certain about what you're uncertain about versus relying on anger to get certain about what you're angry about. There's some solutions to these challenges, I think, and there's some things that we can do right away to help transform this space and work towards making it a more blissful one. Some of which I've already shared with you today, and I'll leave you with one final thing. Some of my happiest moments in my day-to-day life come when I push the power button on this thing. When I take the power button and turn off on the TV. When I have a space where there's no radio going, there's no noise, there's no news, there's nobody telling me what I should think or how I should feel. Have you noticed that too, by the way, that how the news tells you what you should think and how you should feel? It's me deciding. It's me deciding. It's me taking the time to be free from distractions and being able to notice the beautiful greens in the grass, to be able to notice how the light's hitting the mountains now as I'm driving around, to be able to notice how great fresh air feels in my lungs. We don't notice the beauty when we're loading our life up with trash, when we're contaminating what can be our blissful space. You want to immediately change your life? Look at the space that you spend most of your time in and ask yourself, how can I clean this up? Because if you do, you will find that you will create a new space, a space that you're going to be able to fill it with whatever you want. I'll talk to you soon.